I still get jealous, or do I? Well, today I'm going to talk about jealousy, and that's the most common and popular topic and question that I get asked about my non-monogamous life. And I'm always talking to people about the non-monogamous lifestyle, and so I seem to get that question a lot, just a lot of variations about jealousy. So I'm going to talk today about jealousy, and specifically I'm going to answer a couple questions, and I'll talk about myself as I go through here. But there's some questions here I've been asked recently, and I want to make sure I address these. So one of those questions is, I have one burning question on your lifestyle to ask you. How does jealousy fit in? Well, I'm going to talk about that. Another question, are the women in your life not jealous of each other? Say you take one on a romantic trip to Paris, and surely the other woman in your life is going to be jealous. Well, I'll answer that question too. And then the other thing I'm going to talk about and answer the other question, I guess, is and what about you? How would you feel if while you're in Seattle? Because see, I live in two different cities. I live in Seattle and Ventura. And in Ventura, I live with one partner, and in Seattle, I live in another partner, with another partner. And so the question was asked then, how would you feel if while I was in Seattle, my partner in Ventura spent 3 weeks in bed with a hunky younger man? Well, I'm going to be talking about those things, but let me introduce myself first. My name is Non-Monogamous Mark, and I'm the co-founder of the Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And I hope that you'll want to get more information about our association. At the end of this video, I'll be giving you an opportunity to do that. And so today, I hope that this information about jealousy will be really helpful to you. Well, in order to lay a foundation on this whole subject matter, I want to talk a little bit about being a sexually liberated person and what it means to be sexually liberated. You see, for at least a decade to at least 10 years, there's been talk about being sex positive, and a lot of people have kind of shifted their thoughts a little bit, about from just that sex has to be the way that I have sex, to being more open about their thinking and their acceptance of people in their exploration and the way that they enjoy their own sexuality. And so that being sex positive, though, is not the same thing as being sexually liberated. Being sex positive is where the journey begins for most people. Certainly is where the journey began for me. But it's also where the journey ends for a lot of people. And it doesn't need to end there. You can continue moving from being sex positive to being sexually liberated. Well, being sex positive is a place where people are accepting of others for whatever kinks and sexual identity and exploration that they enjoy, as long as it's consensual between the people involved. It's mostly about your own thoughts and your beliefs and your attitudes about what goes on with other people outside of your own life. And having this sex positive process where you're accepting and not negative and criticizing of people for their own kinks and sexual identity and how they express themselves or explore themselves sexually, as long as it's consenting between all the people involved. And that's the general idea about being sex positive. But you see, being sexually liberated is enabling your thoughts, your beliefs, and your attitudes to allow the free exploration of your own sexuality and that of those who you are in a relationship with. In order to help yourself to grow and free yourselves of hang-ups, insecurities, jealousies, your need to control and restrict your partner's sexual life, and to protect your own sense of security, and so many of the other things that people use as protection mechanisms, which keeps them from ever living a life that is truly liberated and free, allowing others to live the same liberated and free life. And so being sexually liberated is about letting go of yourself and letting go of the people that you are in close relationship with, your partners, or in my case, it's willing to let go of my partners and allow them to live their lives. And then my partners do the same for me, is to let go of their own personal hang-ups and insecurities and jealousies, and letting go of that and be willing to grow in order to allow me to live my life without them needing to be in control in some way of my life, or have their claws into my life in some way. And so that's really what sexual liberation is about. And when I started Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Association, it's one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to start the association for people who are curious about, who are interested in, who are transitioning to, and living a sexually liberated, ethical, and consensual non-monogamous lifestyle, to help them to create a new normal in their lives, because so many of us came through life in a monogamous world. And the normal that we know is what's normal to people who wanted us to be monogamous. And that's for me. I'll be talking about that in a moment, but that's where I lived most of my life. And it was a living on the default of life. It's what I was expected to do. It's what I was supposed to do. It's what everybody else says to do. And it's what everybody else says that they're doing. But the truth is that not everybody else is doing that. The statistics show us that over 50% of people in a relationship end up being impacted by or personally involved in cheating. The studies also show that 21% of couples out there today are ethically and consensually non-monogamous, but they're so deeply rooted in the closet. They're hidden away in the closet so deep that nobody possibly ever knows. And the studies also show us that, in fact, this one was a big study just completed last year, at the end of last year, I think it was in December, that says that over half the millennials out there don't want a monogamous relationship. But that's the only thing that they see going on out there in society. You turn on television and the movies and even the songs that are written and that come out, the big hit songs, they're about monogamy, not about being able to expand our lives through our emotions of love and through our connections we have sexually with people, and be able to do that in a non-monogamous way. It always seems to revert back to monogamy. And so the norm that we have, the default that we have, is for monogamy. And so through Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, we're helping people to create a new normal in their life. Or at least if people who are curious about and interested in, maybe transitioning to and having a new normal in their life, we help them to do that so that they can use this new normal to thrive in life, where they increase their abundance, their liberation, and their freedom financially, in health and fitness, in recreation, in relationships, and in sex, rather than living a life that is limited, restricted, and obligated in those areas. You see, that's the norm that we're taught, is how to limit our lives and restrict our lives, and then how to live obligated lives. That doesn't matter if you're talking about financially, limiting, restricting, and obligating ourselves financially. That's the norm. Or if you're wanting to, how to limit yourself and restrict yourself and obligate yourself with your health and fitness. Why is it that by the age of 40, over 50% of our society is obligated to taking medications for the rest of their life? They're dependent on that. That's dependency that's built into our system. And so talking about recreation, do you have all the freedom that you want to be able to enjoy the recreational pursuits that you want to pursue when you want to pursue them? Certainly not. And how about your relationships and sex? We kind of follow along with what the default is. There's no liberation in that. And so one of the things that I started to make a shift in my life was towards liberation. When you allow yourself to move in the direction of sexual liberation, it can free and liberate your life in so many other areas, where it ends up helping you in a much bigger way in your life, where you can start to be a happier person, living the passionate, meaningful life, that life becomes fun again with less drama and stress. And that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about that sexual liberation is so important. It's so fundamental to being able to take and live the life that you truly are going to thrive in. Because when you start to allow yourself to live a sexually liberated life, guess what? Then you stop thinking so much about what everybody else is telling you to do, and you create a new life. And so at the foundation of this question, and any question about jealousy, is really, what do you want? Do you want to live a life that is limited and restricted and obligated, that's a life that runs on default? Or do you want to live a life that's more abundant and liberated and free? And then allowing yourself the ability to move in that direction and not stay where you're at. You see, I lived most of my life by default, suppressing and repressing, denying, depressing my true sexual liberated, ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. In fact, it was so far deep inside of me, buried inside of me, I didn't even know it was there because I was living a very religious life. And oh man, when I was living my religious life, those are just things that you can't even talk about. Fact is, the day I got married, I went from being part of the youth group in the church to being suddenly part of the men's group. My wife, same thing. She became part of the women's group. Now, I have no idea what goes on in a women's group at church, but men's group, what that is, that's a place for you to become indoctrinated and start the brainwashing process. I became the religious person I never wanted to be. And that was through the process of this men's group. One of the things in that group is that we were told we should not talk to our wives about the temptations that we're getting from the devil of maybe pornography, watching porn. Oh my gosh, that's so bad for us, and or maybe the fact that checked out my eyes, they kind of went over this way and checked out this other gal, and maybe I'd have some naughty thoughts. All those kinds of things. And we're supposed to, instead of talking to our partners about, our wives and our husbands, the people that you love the most, where I was told to bring those things to men's group so that the men in men's group can help you overcome those bad things, and so that they can keep you from more evil. And so those are the kinds of things that's where I came from in my life. And I lived that life for 2 decades, and being a very vanilla monogamous person in a vanilla monogamous relationship where I was sexually frustrated, I was sexually depressed and repressed and suppressed. And sure, my wife and I, we had sex and we talked about sex all the time. The fact is, it was a big issue for us because sex was just never good. We were virgins when we got married, and it was just never good in our life. And we kept trying to figure out how to make it good, trying to fix our problem. And it just seemed like we never could. For 20 years, we struggled with that. Well, and then at the point of 25 years, I had reached a point where I just had enough. And I thought, I'm not willing to live the rest of my life being sexually miserable and frustrated. Yes, there were many happy areas of my life, but sex is a big deal. It should be a big deal in your life too. But yet we tell us that it's not, and we suppress it, and we repress it, and we depress it. And I just was tired of that and wasn't going to take and move on into my 50s. At the age of 49, I'd been married for 25 years, and I wasn't willing to just suddenly say, okay, this is going to be how the rest of my life is going to be. It's going to be suppressed and repressed and sexually miserable. I wanted to at least be able to explore myself sexually and be able to see if maybe I could have an enjoyable sexual life ahead of me, something to look forward to, instead of nothing to look forward to when it came to my sexual being and my sexual identity. And so I wanted to start exploring my authentic self and finding out more about who I was sexually. So I've been married monogamously for 25 years, never been with another woman. She's the only woman I'd ever been with. I came to her and I says, hey, this really hasn't worked out so good for us sexually. It's worked out in many other ways, but not sexually. And I think we've tried almost anything we could think of, we've tried to fix our problem. But one thing, we need to think outside the box. We haven't thought about, we haven't even dared to talk about it. And that is that maybe we should have sex with other people. And so, sure enough, who would have ever thought that thinking out of the box that way? I'll give you a shorter version of the rest of the story here. And 2 years later, we went ahead and opened our marriage. Yes, we went through a process, a transition. And that's why I say that ethical and consensual non-monogamy, and people are wanting to consider that as a possibility for themselves. People are interested in it and curious about it. It's not something they should jump into quickly, but with non-monogamous lifestyles, we give people an opportunity to to move into that slowly, just like it took me 2 years to move into that with my wife. Well, and so after I liberated myself from the shackles of religion and from living a default life and I made the shift where I started living a sex positive life. Because that's really all I knew about at that time, was just living a sex positive life. That was in 2007, 10 years ago. And I began living a more sexually um, abundant life. I started enjoying having sexual relationships with other people. And my wife, well, she just said, I'm going to sit back and watch and see how this goes for you, Mark. And I'm going to stay monogamous with you. Well, 5 years went by. And after 5 years, she started saying, well, if I found non-monogamous people that I could date, that I liked as well as you, that are just great guys, then yeah, I'd probably be interested in dating because I can see this has worked out really well for you. But as I dated, people would ask me, I had girlfriends, and they would ask me and says, well, Mark, but your wife's monogamous, because most of my girlfriends also were kind of, their background, their past had always been monogamous when they've been in relationships. Sure, when they've been single, then they're having fun, having sex with multiple people, but when they've been in relationships, it's like, then you can only be in one relationship at a time, well, and you have to be monogamous. Well, that's just a fallacy. In fact, it's such a fallacy. Our norm in our society says that that's normal, being monogamous when you're in a relationship. But it's a fallacy because the statistics show that with the cheating that goes on and with the non-ethical and consensual and non-monogamous lifestyle people that are in the closet, that makes up about 70% of our population, of our couples that are involved in non-monogamy. Some ethical and consensual, and some not. 70%. And so we want to try to help people to think that monogamy is the norm of our society. No, that's a false norm. And so that's where we're creating an opportunity through Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association for people to create a new norm in your life. And it's the norm that is right for you. It's the norm that you can thrive in. And so when I took and started my non-monogamous life in 2007, then I, was very sex positive, but I was very poly. In other words, I'd only have, a couple very serious type relationships with a couple women at a time. My wife and a couple, one or two or three other women. Very serious. They were emotionally very serious relationships. But I really didn't explore my sexuality freely in a way that I liberated myself a lot sexually. That didn't come along until about 2014. And 2014 then is when I met my other partner now, Kathy. I have Chris in my life. She's the woman who lives with me in Seattle. And I have Kathy, who then I live with in Ventura, California. And when she came along, that's when, I started to realize that sexual liberation was not the same as being sex positive. And I wanted to be able to be more liberated sexually. And I saw the impact that's made on my life. And that's why then with ethical and consensual non-monogamy, we want to help other people through Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association be able to take and thrive in their life by finding that same sexual liberation. Again, sex positive is about how we view other people who are, living and exploring and experiencing their sexual lives. But sexual liberation is about how we look at and allow ourselves the freedom to become liberated, to explore and enjoy our own sexuality in a way that truly is abundant and free. And not only do we allow that for ourselves, but we allow that for those who we are in relationships with. I allow that with both of my partners. And so when I was married, then and I was just sex positive, people would always ask me, girlfriends that I was in a relationship with, the most common question I'd have is, well, you're like polyamorous or non-monogamous, Mark, but your wife, she's monogamous to you. How would you feel if your wife decided she wanted to start to date? And I would always explain to them, I says, well, since I don't have that experience, I don't know exactly how I'd feel, but, I would hope that I would feel really good about that. And I'd be happy for my wife and be happy that she wants to have the most happiness and pleasure in her life she could possibly have. And so what I found out is that, yes, I still get jealous because my wife did come to that place where she decided she wanted to go ahead and start exploring and dating. And yes, I still get jealous. And and so I remember those feelings of jealousy that I had. And I sat down and I processed those. And I processed those in that I knew that those feelings were not there so that I would limit my wife or restrict my wife or obligate her to me in some way. You know, she's not my slave. She's somebody I love. And so therefore, why would I want to limit and restrict and obligate her? And so my jealous feelings were mine to have to deal with and work through, not for me to then go and limit or restrict or obligate her in any way and tell her that she had to pull back, that she couldn't do that. She shouldn't do that. You know? Well, it hurts me. No, I hurt me. She wasn't hurting me. She was exploring and enjoying the life that she wanted to be able to enjoy. And so, yes, I experienced some jealousy when she started to date. And you know what? Then people would say, Mark, how would you feel if your wife, because she meets somebody that she seems like the two of you have never been sexually compatible. Well, what if she met someone she just really loved having sex with? Well, guess what? She did. Fact is, she would never allow me to have anal sex with her. Not once in all of our years. And so that was a big taboo, big no-no for her. And the guy that she met, it seemed like that was the only kind of sex that he wanted and enjoyed with her. Because as she told me, it took him 4 or 5 months before he finally put it into her vagina. Until then, he was putting it in her back hole, not her front hole. And so, she found someone for some reason, that which was taboo to me, and even after that, it was always taboo to me. And she found someone, though, that she lit up sexually with. And that guy then convinced her, after about, it was 7 months into the relationship, he convinced her that she should leave me to be able to live the rest of her life with him. And so she came to me and told me that she was changing plans in her life, and her future did not include me. You know, and so was that hard to go through? Yes, it was hard. And I was severely depressed for a couple months. But do I want to limit and restrict my wife to keep me from experiencing and keep her from experiencing a better life? No. Because you see, things in my life, I have a belief that things are always going to work out good for me in my life. Not that, okay, life is over, this is the end. It'll never be as good as this, or it'll never be this good again. It'll never be better than this. No, I don't have that feeling at all about life. I have a feeling and a belief about life that things always work out for me, and the life is great. It's a great adventure, and I just love it. And sure enough, after I got 3 months into my depression, I picked myself up, and I said one day, I got to move on with my life. It was 2 months after that I met Kathy. And I never thought that I'd really have that kind of a relationship like I have with Kathy. But I met her. And so like Chris, my other partner, she'd been with me at that point for 5 years. Was she jealous? Yes, she had her jealousy to deal with at that point. In fact, it is throughout our whole relationship. She'd been with me for 5 years, and she had been through jealousy hell. Morbid jealousy. She called the green-eyed monster. She's got a whole group out there, hundreds of people in her group that she's coached and helped with the area of jealousy, because she experienced jealousy so deeply in her own life. But you see, jealousy is not for us to limit and restrict and obligate other people or even ourselves. It's there to teach us and to help us to understand and deal with our own insecurities and our own inadequacies and all the things in our lives that really hold us back. And so through becoming sexually liberated, you face that jealousy and you look at, what's this telling me? Do I want this person to experience the kinds of pleasure they're experiencing? Do I want this person to experience the kind of happiness? And do I want this person to be obligated to me for the rest of our lives because of monogamy or jealousy? No, I really don't. I want the people that I love in my life to have the absolute best life that they can have, just like they want the same from me. And that may mean that we find other partners along the way. And when that happens, there you have to address that question. Is life over for me? Or this is just terrible? It's your thinking that makes it so. And one of the things that, I want to encourage you to do is to plant the right seeds. And so if you're planting seeds of jealousy or obligation or limitation or restriction, guess what? Then if you planted those seeds 5 years ago, that's what you're reaping today. And so I don't plant those kinds of seeds. If I feel jealous and figure out quickly what is going on, where am I feeling insecure, and I deal with that then, but I don't deal with it in a way that limits, restricts, or obligates my partners. I realize then that, hey, this is my own insecurity. This is my own fear. This is, my own thing to deal with. And let's go on with living happy lives and even go on to happier lives than we have right now because we're not willing to let jealousy limit, restrict, and obligate ourselves. And so plant the seeds of things that you want in your life. And if you want more abundance, more liberation, more freedom, either financially, with your health and fitness, with your relationships, with your recreational pursuits, with your sex life, if you want to increase your abundance, your liberation and freedom, then plant seeds for what you want, not seeds for what's going to limit, restrict, and obligate you. You see, that's the default in our society that I lived with for 20 years. But that's not the default I live with anymore. So head yourself in the direction that you want to go rather than in the direction that you really don't want to go. And so one of the things with the seeds that we plant in our life, people say, well, this is just me. This is who I am. This is what is real in my life. I'm feeling jealous. Okay, that's fine. If I'm feeling jealous, then right now that's real. But you know what? 10 minutes from now or 5 minutes from now, that's history. It's from there. It's all what goes on in my head about that. Do I want to hold on and hang on to that jealousy? Or do I want to think about what I want and an increase in my abundance, my liberation, my freedom, where I'm not limited and restricted and obligated? So I think about what I want instead of thinking about those things in my head and my feelings and my thoughts and my words. Thinking about and all those kinds of things. It's what I call being in harmonic balance, having your feelings, your thoughts, and your words all be in balance with each other and going in the direction of where I want to go in life, not in direction that keeps me from going where I want to go. And jealousy is one of those things that will take and help us to see the things in our own life that is maybe keeping us from going where we want to go in our life. And you can allow it to limit, restrict, and obligate you if that's what you want to do. But allow it to limit, restrict, and obligate you, but do not put that on anybody else. You don't have the right to do that. We don't have the right to control other people like what happened back in the times of slavery. Even if you're married to someone or if you're in a committed relationship with someone, you don't have a right to obligate them, to limit them, and to restrict them, and to control them. They are not yours. They're a free human being. Treat them that way. And so I want to go ahead now and answer those 3 questions. Now, the first question was, I have one burning question about your lifestyle. How does jealousy fit in? How does that fit in? Yes, I experience jealousy. You'll experience jealousy. We're all going to experience jealousy. You know what? I also experience hunger every day. It's a natural part of life. But that, because I experience hunger every day, doesn't mean that I need to go ahead and, because by golly, if I go out there and have food, then, that's probably food that is going to cause someone else to be starved. They're going to starve because I had food. What a ridiculous thought, right? But yet I'm hungry every day and I eat every day. And so same thing about jealousy. Do we get jealous? Yes. And I am now getting jealous less and less in my life. Just like my partner Chris experienced when she started to really deal with her jealousies. Does she still get jealous? Yes, but less and less. My partner Kathy, does she get jealous? Yes, less and less. Because we start putting our thoughts, our feelings, and the words that come out of our mouth, we head them all in the direction of what we want. And what we want is an abundant, liberated, and free life, not a life of obligation, of restriction and limitation, a life living on default. That's not what we want. And so how does jealousy fit in? It fits in to help me to see the things that I need to work on in my life. My own insecurities, for me to see them and deal with them. My own inadequacies, for me to see them and deal with them. And I sometimes feel like I turned 60 later this week. And so it's like, I can look at my body and sometimes feel like I'm getting to be a fat old man. But no, that's not what I say, and that's not what I feel, and that's not what I think. You can say, well, that's the reality. I mean, I'm 60, I'm overweight, fat old man, right? No, it's like, well, maybe that's what was, but what was in 5 minutes will be, or what is rather, that may be what is, but what is in 5 minutes from now, that'll be what was. And I don't want to live my life for what was. I want to live my life for what I want and what will be, not what was. Because what is this very minute, 5 minutes from now, it's what was. And that's what you can change in your mind, this thought process, where you start to plant seeds that help you to grow and have what you want instead of just creating more seeds of what you don't want. And if the seeds that you are planting give you the things that you don't want, then change the seeds that you're planting and start to live for what you want, not for what is. That's how you get stuck. So how does jealousy fit in? It shows me areas that I need to change, areas I need to shift, areas that I need to grow. It doesn't fit in by showing me areas that I need to limit, restrict, and obligate myself or my partners. So the next question, are the women in your life not jealous of each other? Let's say you take one on a romantic trip to Paris. Surely the other woman in your life is going to be jealous. Well, Chris and I, in a couple months, are going to Costa Rica on a really nice vacation. And Kathy and I, we don't really talk about it. But I know that she feels a little jealous about that. But on the other hand, Kathy and I do things that, yes, Chris feels a little jealous about. But going back to everything else I've talked about here, the answer to the first question is how jealousy fits in our life. It fits in our life, even on going on a romantic trip, or maybe it's just something so simple as a romantic camping trip. Then maybe those things create the jealousy to help that person to grow in their life. Not to help to obligate them, limit them, restrict them, or have them obligate, limit, or restrict the people that they love in their life. And so the question here asked is, are the women in your life not jealous of each other? Well, yeah. And they can keep planting those jealous seeds if they want to have more jealousy, but they don't. They don't keep planting those jealous seeds. They keep planting the seeds of what they want, not what holds them back, not what limits them or me, restricts them or me, obligates them or me. And so that's how we deal with our jealousy. And then question here is the next and the last question here is, and what about you? How would you feel while you were in Seattle? My partner Kathy spent 3 weeks in bed with a hunky younger man. You see, because I spent 3 weeks in Seattle and then 3 weeks in Ventura, and I fly back and forth between the two cities every 3 weeks. And so, yeah, if Kathy spent 3 weeks with a hunky younger man in bed in Seattle, I'd be fine. I'd be probably excited about that because I've grown in my life. I've dealt with my insecurities. When a year ago, Kathy and I moved from Seattle to Ventura, California, and I dealt with that jealousy and that stark reality of saying, oh my God, what is this going to do to my relationship with her? She's going to be more than 1,000 miles away, 1,200 miles away from me. How's this going to work out? All those insecurities and all those questions. And I spent a week feeling really jealous that she could go there and she could find some hunky young man that's going to spend 3 weeks in bed with her, or some beautiful young woman, she's bisexual, beautiful young woman that's going to spend 3 weeks in bed with her, and then who knows, maybe she'll find that she just likes women so much that she doesn't need me anymore. All kinds of things. You know, your mind can run absolutely wild if you plant the weeds, the seeds of weeds in your head. And I just don't plant those seeds that are going to grow as weeds in my head. And so this is where, in part of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, is we help people to live intentional in their life so that the thoughts that they have are very deliberate thoughts, not just thoughts that run wild and can create a crazy life for you, but instead create a wonderful life for yourself by having this and planting the seeds of where you want to go and what you want to be like, and be intentional with your life. And so if Kathy then, like, the fact is, she here about 2 months ago met, and it's funny, we went out to a movie. It's called Your Latin Lover, and maybe you saw the movie, you know, Your Latin Lover. And so then we went out to have a drink one night, and she noticed the waiter, and she goes, there's my Latin lover. And we joked about that. Well, then, after I left town, she went back to the same place, and guess what? That Latin guy was still there. And so she gave him his card. And sure enough, they started to date. And now he has become her Latin lover. And I think that's exciting, you know? And I wanted to make sure, because he's from South America or Central America or somewhere down there, and so he doesn't always understand concepts like she started talking to him about non-monogamy, saying, I'm non-monogamous. Well, he didn't have a clue what that meant, you know, and so, you know, it's important for him to know that yeah, when they go to bed, it's with my approval. And could I get jealous? At the point where I'm at now, I didn't experience any jealousy about that. And I think it's because of the seeds I'm planting are the seeds that I want, not the seeds of obligation and limitation and restriction. But they're the seeds that I want. And that's the seeds of abundant, liberated, free life, where I know that things always work out in my life, just as I hope that they always work out in your life too. So thanks a lot. I hope this will be very helpful to you. Go ahead and comment in the box there for you to leave a comment and tell me, you know, if you have questions about jealousy. Be sure to ask your question, but leave a comment for me as well. And to find out more about non-monogamous lifestyles, get on our newsletter list, our email list, and you do that by clicking on that link. And so the link is right there below in the description box of the video. And so thanks a lot, and have a great time in your life.